3, 2.
Sorry, could you say one
They
as
don't
well?
do it. Have you ever seen iCarly?
No.
Freddie goes 5, 4, 3, 2, and then it goes in the
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Caledonian Creep Show. You're here with our hosts, Azzy and Alex.
Wow.
Today we're going to be reading The Thing in the Maple Grove by nosleep 3746.
Also known as
Lord Voidian?
Lord Voiden.
Or Lord Voiden, which is a cool username, by the way. I like that
Very
a lot.
cool.
Looks like a kind of like autumn story today.
Hence the colors.
We've got the
Have you guys
vibe.
noticed the production value? We put these beautiful little colors in the background to symbolize something in the story.
Wow,
Ooh.
symbolization. Okay, let's get into it today. The first time I saw the grove, I thought it was diseased. Not rotting exactly, but corrupted. It was late October, the air sharp with the smell of decaying leaves and wood smoke, and I was checking my trap lines along the northern ridge of my property. I've lived my whole 43 years in the shadow of these mountains, and I know these woods like the back of my own hand. Or I thought I did. The maple grove sits in a shallow bowl between two hills, a place where light gets caught and filtered, turning everything a pale, watery gold in the afternoon. Normally, it's the pretty spot of my land, but that day, the colour was all wrong. The reds of the leaves wasn't the usual vibrant bloody crimson. They were a dark, purplish hue, like a fresh bruise. The yellows were swallow, jaundiced, and the quiet. And that was the first thing that truly set my teeth on edge. A woods is never truly hushed. There's always a scrabble of a squirrel, the call of a jay, the sigh of the wind through the branches. This was a dead, muffled stillness, as if the grove was holding its breath. Even in broad daylight, with the sun directly overhead, the air inside that bowl felt thick and wrong, like breathing through a wet cloth. I stood at the edge of the tree line, my old Remington 870 cradled in the crook of my arm, and just listened. Nothing. My boot crunched on a fallen twig as I took a step forward, and the sound was absurdly loud, swallowed almost instantly by the heavy air. I remember feeling a prickle on the back of my neck, the kind you get when you know you're being watched. I scanned the trees, looking for the reflective gleam of eyes, but saw nothing, just those sickly, bruise-coloured leaves and the grey, skeletal branches. I've been a trapper since I was a boy, taught by my grandfather. It's not a glamorous life, but it's an honest one. I know the patterns of the animals, their comings and goings, and I knew that nothing, not a deer, not a rabbit, not even a goddamn bird, would willingly go into that grove. My trap lines, which usually showed plenty of sign, ended abruptly at its border. It was like an invisible fence had been erected, and every creature with sense respected it. Shaking off the feeling, I chalked it up to a long week and an overactive imagination. I turned to leave, deciding to give the grove a wide berth when something caught my eyes. A flicker of movement deep within the trees. It was quick, a shift of a shadow that was too tall and too thin to be a deer. My grip tightened on the shotgun.
Hello.
I called out, my voice flat and dead in the stillness. There was no answer, just that same oppressive hush. Then from the heart of the grove came a sound. It was soft, wet, crackling, like someone stepping on a pile of rotten fruit, but slower, deliberate. Crack, squelch, pause, crack, squelch. I didn't want to hear more. I backed away, keeping my eyes on the grove until I was a good 50 yards up the ridge. The feeling of being watched didn't leave me until I was back on my porch, the solid oak door locked behind me. I told myself it was probably a bear, a sick one maybe, explaining the strange behaviour of the wildlife. But I'd never seen a bear move like that shadow had moved. It was unnatural. All of it felt poisoned.
That was 3 days ago. I tried to put it out of my mind, focusing on salting the pelts I'd collected and splitting wood for the winter. But yesterday, my dog Gus, a hound mix with more courage than sense, didn't come back for his dinner. Gus never misses a meal. I remember the day I brought him home as a pup, how he'd wolf down his food so fast I worried he'd choke. Then he'd look up at me with those amber eyes like he was asking for seconds. 10 years old now, and he still attacked his bowl like he'd been starving for weeks. This morning, I found his tracks leading straight towards the maple grove. They disappeared at the exact same spot where I'd stopped. There were no tracks leading back out. Even in the harsh morning light, with frost glittering on the grass, the grove looked wrong. The shadows inside it were too deep, too dark for the angle of the sun. The corruption wasn't bound by night and day. It was bound to that place, that bowl of diseased earth. Now, as the sun begins to dip below the hills, casting long, distorted shadows that seem to claw their way towards my house, I'm sitting here with a cold cup of coffee and my shotgun across my knees. I hear something else carried by the wind that's finally picked up. It's faint, but unmistakable. It sounds like a dog whining. It sounds exactly like Gus. But Gus never whined. Not once in the 10 years I had him. Even when I accidentally caught his paw in the truck door, he just looked at me with those patient eyes and waited for me to free him. He was the toughest, most stoic animal I've ever known. The whining cut through the twilight, a high, pitiful sound that seemed to weave itself between the trees. It was coming from the direction of the grove, no doubt about it. Every instinct told me to run towards it, to find my dog, but the part of my brain that kept me alive in these woods for 4 decades screamed to stay put. It wasn't just that Gus never whined, it was the quality of the sound. It was too perfect, like a recording of a dog in distress, played back with a slight, unnatural lag that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I love this so
Really
far.
fucking good premise. I was just thinking that.
So
the
good.
sound of the dog whining being too perfect. So I will say, like, a lot of these stories have got, skin changers kind of creatures, and I can get really unsaturated or can get really saturated. It's not interesting. This is setting it up so well.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, right?
And it's like I've seen this before, like
Sure.
the playing, the mimicry of whatever. But I don't know. It's I'm fine with that. It's so well written here and so enticing.
The dog whining, but the dog never whines. Exactly. Yeah.
So good. I stood on the porch for a long time, the shotgun cold and heavy in my hands, listening. The whining would start, rise to a frantic pitch, then stop abruptly, leaving a vacuum that felt even more threatening. After the 3rd cycle, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't leave him out there, even if this was a trap. I loaded a fresh shell into the chamber, the click echoing in the quiet, and stepped off the porch. I didn't go straight for the grove. That would have been suicide. Instead, I circled wide, keeping to the high ground where the spruce grew thick, their needles muffling my steps. The air had turned cold, carrying the damp, earthy smell of coming frost. From the ridge, I had a clear view down into the bowl where the maple stood. In the fading light, the bruised purple leaves were now a deep, Venus black, and the hush around them was absolute. The whining had stopped the moment I left the porch.
Fantastic.
So fucking good.
Fantastic.
I used my binoculars, scanning the edge of the tree line. Nothing moved. But then I saw them. Tracks. Not Gus's. These were fresh, made in the soft mud of a seep that spring fed from the hill. These were long and narrow, with a deep, precise impression at the front and split into 2 distinct toes. They looked almost like deer tracks, but wrong. Too elongated, and the stride was enormous, covering ground in a way that suggested a creature walking on 2 legs. The tracks led from the grove, headed towards my house, then looped back. They had come within 50 yards of my porch before turning around. My blood ran cold. It had been watching me. While I was standing there listening to that fake whining, it had been right there, studying me.
I needed to talk to someone. Isolation is a trapper's lot, but this was different. This felt like a siege. The closest neighbour is Old Man Hemlock, who lives a mile down the valley. He's been here even longer than I have. A bitter, weathered relic who claims his family settled this land before the state was a state. I don't like him much. He's got a mean streak wider than the valley, but he knows things about these mountains that nobody else remembers. I found him on his rickety porch, sharpening a knife on a whetstone. The rhythmic shh-click was the only sound. He didn't look up as I approached, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his weathered hands gripped the knife handle a little too tight.
Hemlock.
I said, my voice rough. He finally glanced at me, his eyes pale and watery and a face like cracked leather. There was something haunted in those eyes, something that hadn't been there the last time I'd seen him.
What do you want? Something's wrong up by the Maple Grove, on my land.
He stopped sharpening. The sudden stillness was more unnerving than the rhythmic scraping had been.
The bull?
I nodded.
Yeah, the bull. The trees, the color's off. And there's something in there. It took my dog.
He let out a dry, rattling laugh that turned into a cough. But the laugh was forced. Very nice.
Thank you.
But the laugh was forced, hollow. His knuckles were white where he gripped on the whetstone.
Took your dog? Probably a coyote. Or a cat. You're getting spooked, boy.
He went back to his knife, but the rhythm was off now. Jerky, shh-click.
It wasn't a coyote.
I told him about the corruption in the grove, how it persisted even into the daylight, the shadow, the tracks. I didn't mention the whining. That felt too insane to say out loud. When I described the tracks, his hands stilled completely. He looked past me, towards the ridge where my property lay, and I saw a genuine fear flicker across his features.
Two-toed?
He asked quietly.
Yeah, like a deer, but not.
He was quiet for a long time. The wind picked up, whistling through the gaps in his cabin's logs. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper.
My grandfather,
He said.
he talked about a thing that lived in the deep hollows. A thing that got lonely. It wouldn't kill you straight off. First, it would learn you. It'd watch from the trees, learn your walk, learn your voice. It'd practice.
He looked me dead in the eye, and I saw something break in his expression.
It makes sounds to draw you in. Sounds you want to hear. A baby crying. A friend calling for help. A dog whining.
My mouth went dry.
What is it?
He shrugged, a slow, weary movement, but his hands were shaking now.
Don't know if it ever had a name. We just called it the Hollow One. Said it couldn't stand empty spaces. Couldn't abide them. Had to fill them up with something. Usually, it was with you.
He pointed his knife towards my land, the blade trembling slightly.
If it's in that grove, you leave it be. You seal up your house and you pray it gets bored. You don't go looking for your dog. I can't just leave Gus. Gus is gone.
He said, and there was a finality in his voice that felt like a tombstone slamming down. But also something else, a terrible understanding, as if he'd lost something himself.
That thing is wearing his sound. It ain't him. It's just the hollow left behind.
He stood abruptly, almost knocking over his chair.
You need to go. Now. And don't ever come back here after dark.
There was genuine panic in his voice now, and it infected me. He'd seen this before, known this fear. As I walked away, I heard him calling out behind me, his voice cracked and desperate.
Don't listen to it. Whatever it sounds like, don't listen.
The walk home was the longest mile of my life. Every rustle in the undergrowth sounded like a footstep. Every creak of a branch sounded like a voice. Hemlock's word echoed in my head. It learns you. I thought about the shadow I'd seen, how it had moved. I thought about the tracks circling my house. When I got back, the night was full dark. But even in the starlight, I could see that Grove's corruption was spreading. The grass at the edge of my property line was browning, wilting in patches that led like a trail towards my house. Whatever was in that bowl wasn't content to stay there. It was reaching out, claiming more ground.
I locked the door and bolted it, something I almost never do. I sat by the window with the shotgun, watching the tree line. The woods were never truly dark. Starlight or moonlight usually gave the snow or the pale bark of the aspens a soft glow. But the maple grove was a pool of absolute blackness, a hole cut out of the night. An hour passed, then two. I must have dozed off because the sound jolted me awake. It was a voice. My voice. Hello? It called from the edge of the woods. It was my own tired, strained baritone, perfect in every inflection. Is anyone out there? I think I'm lost. It was me, calling for help. The mimicry was flawless. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. I gripped my shotgun so hard my knuckles ached. The voice came again, closer now. Hello? I can see your light. Please. It was using my own voice to lure me out. Hemlock was right. It was learning, and it was at my door. The voice outside was my own, but frayed at the edges with a panic I hadn't let myself feel yet. Hello? I see your light. Please. It was perfect, down to the slight catch in my throat I got when I've been breathing cold air for too long. I stayed frozen by the window, the wooden floorboards cold under my socks. My finger rested on the trigger guard of the shotgun, a tremor in my hand that I couldn't quite still. Answering it felt like madness, but letting it stay out there, learning, practicing my voice until it could fool anyone, that was a different kind of death. Hemlock's words echoed. It learns ya. I made a decision. I couldn't shoot what I couldn't see, and opening the door was suicide, but I had to disrupt it. I had to show it I wasn't an easy mark. I moved to the door, keeping low, and pressed my face against the rough wood near the hinge. I took a deep breath, and then I shouted, my real voice booming in the confined space of the cabin. I know what you are! Get off my land! The hush that followed was immediate and absolute. It was more unnerving than the mimicry. It was a listening quiet. I could feel it out there, just beyond the door, processing. Then a sound started, low and soft. It wasn't my voice anymore. It was the sound of claws, long and delicate, scratching slowly down the length of the door. A dry, rasping whisper, like bone on wood. It started at the top and dragged all the way down to the bottom. I could picture it, standing there, running its fingers or whatever it had, down the door in a grotesque caress. Then it stopped. I heard footsteps, not trying to be quiet anymore. They were heavy, with that same two-toed gait I'd seen in the mud, but now they crunched on the gravel path leading away from my house. They were leading back towards the maple grove.
I waited until the sound faded completely before I let out the breath I'd been holding. My heart was hammering against my ribs. It had come to my door. It had touched my house. The violation of it made me feel sick. I spent the rest of the night barricaded in, dozing fitfully in a chair, every snap of the cooling wood stove making me jump. At first light, I unbarred the door. The morning was crisp and still, the sky a pale washed-out grey. I half expected to see some kind of mark on the door, but the wood was unblemished. No scratches, no footprints on the porch. It was as if I had never been there. But when I stepped off the porch and looked at the gravel, my blood went cold. There in the damp earth beside the path was a single, fresh, two-toed track. It was deep, as if it had stood there for a long time, watching. And beside it, pressed into the mud, was something else. A tuft of coarse grey hair, Gus's hair. I remember how he'd shed like crazy every spring, leaving tumbleweeds of fur rolling around my cabin. I'd complained about it then, but now I'd give anything to sweep up another pile of his hair. That was it. The grief and rage I'd been suppressing boiled over. It had taken my dog. It'd come to my home. It was taunting me. I wasn't going to wait for it to get bored. I was going to the grove. But first, I had to check on Hemlock. His terror the night before had been real, and something told me he was in as much danger as I was. I loaded the shotgun with buckshot, stuffed extra shells in my coat pocket, and took my grandfather's old hunting knife from its sheath on the mantel. The bone handle was smooth and familiar in my grip. The walk to Hemlock's place was eerily quiet, even for mid-morning. No birds, no squirrels, just the crunch of frost-brittle grass under my boots. His cabin looked normal from the outside, smoke rising from the chimney, but something was off. His door was standing open, just a crack, and there was no sound of movement from inside. I called out as I approached.
Hemlock, you there?
No answer. The stillness around his place felt familiar now, the same dead calm that surrounded the grove. I pushed open the door with the barrel of my shotgun. Hemlock was sitting in his chair by the fire, the whetstone in his lap, the knife in his hand. At first glance, he looked like he was just resting, but his eyes were open, staring at nothing. There was no rise and fall to his chest. On the table beside him was a plate of half-eaten food, still warm. He'd been dead less than an hour. There were no marks on him, no sign of violence, but on the floor beside his chair was a small puddle of that black, viscous sap I'd seen weeping from the maples. And that smell, that sweet coppery rot, it hung thick in the air. I had come for him in the night. Not to kill, not exactly. To hollow him out, to learn him. And then it had left him behind, empty. I backed out of the cabin, my hands shaking. The grove wasn't just claiming animals now, it was claiming people. And I was next.
The woods were unnaturally hushed as I approached the grove. No birds chirped, no squirrels chattered. But unlike the crushing stillness of the past days, this felt expectant, like the entire forest was holding its breath. As I neared the bowl, the familiar dead zone began. The sounds faded away completely, replaced by that oppressive, muffled quiet. The air grew still and cold, and the smell hit me. A sweet, cloying odor of decay, like overripe fruit and something else. Something metallic, like copper. I stopped at the tree line, just as I had before. The maples stood in their twisted circle, their leaves that same sickly purple black. But now I could see they weren't just diseased. They were feeding. The ground inside the grove was bare of any undergrowth, covered only by a thick layer of fallen leaves that looked unnaturally dark and wet. Several of the larger trees had deep, vertical splits in their bark, weeping that black sap I'd seen at Hemlock's. And then I saw Gus's collar. It was lying in the center of the grove, the bright red nylon, a stark slash of color against the dark earth. The brass nameplate glinted in the weak light, the same nameplate I'd engraved at the feed store when he was just a pup, so proud to have his first real dog. It was just sitting there, clean as if it had been placed there deliberately. I knew this was a trap, a blatant, obvious lure. But seeing that collar, the one I'd buckled around his neck when he was small enough to fit in my lap, broke something in me. I stepped across the threshold into the grove. The change was instantaneous. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The quiet became absolute, a physical pressure on my eardrums. The sweet, rotten smell was so thick I could taste it on the back of my throat. I took a few steps forward, my boots sinking into the spongy leaf litter. Every sense screamed at me to run. I was halfway to the collar when I heard the sound behind me. A soft, padded footstep. I spun around, shotgun raised. There was nothing there. Just the trees, watching. Then, from my left, a whisper. It was my own voice again, but this time it was calm, conversational. The way I sound when I'm talking to Gus. "It's all right, boy. Come on out." I swung the gun towards the sound. Nothing. A branch snapped to my right. I turned again, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The grove seemed to be closing in on me, the trees leaning inward. The voice came from directly behind me, so close I could feel a faint disturbance in the air. "I'm lost." I whirled, a finger tightening on the trigger, and I saw it. Not all of it, just a glimpse, a flicker of movement between two thick trunks. It was tall, far taller than a man, and impossibly thin. Its skin was the color of bleached bone, and it seemed to blend in with the trees. Its limbs long and jointed wrong. I didn't see a face, just a suggestion of a head that tilted in an unnatural angle. Then it was gone, melting back into the shadows. But it left something behind. Hanging from a low branch was a small, tattered piece of cloth. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. It was a strip of red flannel, the same pattern as the shirt Hemlock had been wearing yesterday. There were dark stains on it that looked suspiciously like black sap. A new sound began, echoing softly through the grove. It was the rhythmic shh-click of a knife being sharpened on whetstone. Hemlock's sound. It was perfect down to the slight irregularity when he paused to test the blade's edge. And it was coming from multiple directions at once. The sound of Hemlock's whetstone surrounded me, a metallic chorus coming from every shadowed space between the trees. Shh-click, shh-click. It was a taunt, a reminder that everything I knew was being consumed and played back at me. The strip of red flannel hung from the branch like a flag of surrender. Hemlock hadn't been lying. He'd been a lesson. A demonstration of what happened when the Hollow One learned you completely. And now it was my turn. I stood my ground, the shotgun stock pressed against my shoulder. Panic was a cold fire in my veins, but beneath it was a colder, harder core of fury. This thing had taken my dog. It had killed Hemlock. It had violated my home. It thought it knew me. It thought I was just another hollow to be filled. But Hemlock's words came back to me. "It can't stand empty spaces. Had to fill them up." If it needed to fill silence with sound, needed to fill hollows with something, what if I gave it nothing? "Show yourself!"
I roared, my voice crackling in the dead air. The whetstone sound stopped. In the hush that followed, I heard a new sound. A soft, wet crunching. The same one I'd heard days ago, but closer now. Much closer. It was coming from directly behind the tree where the flannel hung. I didn't wait. I fired. The blast was deafening. A shocking violation of the grove's stillness. The buckshot tore into the trunk, splintering bark and sending shards of wood flying. The crunching sound stopped. For a single, heart-stopping moment, there was nothing. Then, a sound I will hear until the day I die. It was a low, guttural clicking, A sound no animal around here could make. It was a sound of annoyance, of irritation. I hadn't hurt it. I had only annoyed it. It stepped out from behind the tree. It was taller than I'd imagined, 7 feet at least, and was so thin it seemed to waver like a heat haze. Its skin wasn't bark coloured. It was the colour of old bone, stretched taut over a frame of impossible angles. Its legs reversed like a deer's, but its arms were too long, ending in hands with 2 long, twig-like fingers, and an opposable thumb. It had no face. Where a face should have been was a smooth, pale expanse, broken only by a long, vertical gash that I had realised was a mouth, currently smeared with something black and viscous. Sap. It was feeding. But it was what hung from its neck that made my breath catch in my throat. Gus's collar. The red nylon was a garish necklace on that pale thing. It had put it on like a trophy. It tilted its headless head, and from the gash of my mouth, my own voice emerged, calm and measured.
It's all right, boy. Come on out.
It was repeating what I'd said to Gus 1,000 times. When he was hiding under the porch during thunderstorms, when he was reluctant to come back from his explorations. It had learned my life, catalogued every sound I'd ever made around my dog. I fired again, this time aiming centre mass. The thing moved with a speed that was pure liquid shadow. It flowed to the side, and the shot peppered the ground where it had been. It didn't run, it just shifted. And then it was closer. It smelled of wet earth and that coppery sweetness, a smell so thick it was a taste. I backpedaled, fumbling for another shell. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it. The thing watched me, its body making small, twitching adjustments. It was learning my fear, cataloguing every tremor, every panic breath. It took a step forward, its 2-toed feet sinking into spongy ground without another sound. Then another. It was herding me, deeper into the grove. I saw then what I hadn't noticed before. In the very centre of the bowl, the earth was not just bare, it was sunken. A shallow depression filled with those dark, wet leaves, and protruding from those leaves were bones. Animal bones mostly. A deer skull, the long ribcage of a bear, and nearer to the edge something smaller, a canine jawbone, withered and old, and next to it a fresher kill, a rabbit, its fur matted and dark. This was its larder. This was where it brought things. This was where it hollowed them out. It was between me and the way out. I had 1 shell left in the chamber. My knife was in my hand, a pathetic silver of steel against this thing. Hemlock's words came back to me.
It can't stand empty spaces. Had to fill them up.
An idea, desperate and insane, formed in my mind. It learned sounds. It needed to fill the quiet with something familiar, something it could understand and use. What if I gave it nothing to learn? What if I became the empty space it couldn't tolerate? As I took another gliding step towards me, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I stopped. I lowered the shotgun. I forced my breathing to slow. Forced the terror down into a tight, hard ball in my gut. I looked past it, at the trees beyond the grove. I made my mind a blank, white wall. I became nothing.
The thing stopped. It tilted its head again, that smooth expanse where a face should be, turning towards me like a flower following the sun. The gash mouth opened, and my voice came out, laced with a questioning tremor. Hello? I didn't move. I didn't speak. I was a statue. I was empty. I was the void it couldn't fill. It took a step closer, the smell overwhelming. It was so close I could see the fine cracks in its bone-white skin, the way the black sap oozed from the long pores in its mouth. It raised one of its long-fingered hands and reached out for my face. I flinched internally, but held my ground, my eyes still fixed on the distance. The fingers stopped an inch from my cheek. They were cold, radiating a deep, unnatural chill. It was confused. I was not behaving according to the script it had learned. There was no fear sound, no anger sound, no pleading. There was just nothingness. A hollow it couldn't fill because there was nothing there to fill. It made that low clicking sound again, this time with a note of frustration. It leaned in, its faceless head hovering next to mine. The gash mouth opened wide, revealing rows of small, needle-sharp teeth, and it tried just one last thing. It emitted a soft, perfect whimper. Gus's whimper. The sound he'd made the day I found him as a stray pup, hungry and scared and alone. It was the most heartbreaking sound I've ever heard. Every fiber of my being screamed to respond, to call his name, to reach out. But I didn't. I held on to the emptiness inside me like a lifeline. I was a void. I was nothing. The creature recoiled as if struck. It let out a shriek that was a mosaic of every sound it had ever collected. A bear's roar, Hemlock's rattling cough, my own shout. The screech of a hawk, Gus's bark, a dozen voices I didn't recognize, all layered into a single, discordant wail of rage and confusion. It couldn't stand my emptiness. It turned and flowed away from me, melting into the deeper shadows of the grove, its form blurring until it was gone. The quiet returned, heavier than ever. I didn't wait to see if it would come back. I just ran. I crashed through the tree line, not stopping until I was back on my porch, heaving lungfuls of clean, cold air. I survived, but I am not the same. The grove is still there. I see it from my window, a wound on the land that seems to pulse with its own malevolent life. I don't go near it. The corruption is spreading, slowly but steadily. Dead patches of grass reaching like fingers towards my house. Sometimes at night, I hear things. A voice calls my name, the sound of a whetstone, a dog whining. But now I hear another sound too. One I never heard before that day in the grove. A low, frustrated clicking, coming from just beyond the tree line. It's still learning new sounds, adding them to its collection. It's patient. And sometimes when the wind is right, I smell that sweet, coppery rot getting stronger. It's getting closer, claiming more ground each day. I sit in my silent house, my own hollow, and I wait. I know it can't stand the emptiness, but I also know that eventually, even the deepest voids find something to fill it. And when that happens, I'll have nothing left to give but myself. The thing in the maple grove is still learning. I'm leaving tonight, torching this cabin and everything in it. But when I step outside, the silence follows me like a shadow. Maybe I escaped, or maybe I just carried the hollow with me.
What an excellent story.
That was really fucking good.
What a fantastic fucking story. Yeah. I loved that start to finish. What I was really expecting, especially with the two-toed footsteps, was your classical idea of a Wendigoon, essentially a deer man with those big antlers, but the idea of it being faceless, almost like a tree with a slash down the middle and those small teeth. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. I really enjoyed the reveal of that. And again, usually in stories, you don't want to reveal the creature, but this was extremely interesting. And I like at the end that our main character, he did beat the creature, but he's also not leaving.
Yeah.
The woods are all he knows.
Yeah.
And he is like essentially being...
Well, he's burning down the house and leaving.
Yeah. So literally, like, it's just it seems so interesting to me. Just that idea of this guy that's set in his ways, having to deal with this new threat.
But he's not. He's leaving the house.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wait.
It says he's going to burn down the house and leave.
Oh. Well. Still same. Yeah, maybe he's going to burn down the house and leave, but still, I think it's interesting that he had to go through this.
I almost wish. I don't know. I'm not. We're kind of flipped from last time. I have a few notes on this.
Oh,
one.
you do? Interesting.
I feel like the pacing was just a little too quick. I feel like we're getting a lot of him talking about his relationship with his dog and referencing back to it, but we never actually see the dog.
Sure.
I feel like it's 2 days, right, that we see besides like the very end. And I feel like there should be a little bit more to that.
Yeah.
If this was like over a week or over a month, and there was more character building, maybe more like of a slow introduction to his neighbor. I don't love the trope of like you go to the wise old man who happens to know everything,
absolutely.
and then he's out of the story.
I get that as well. I think it would have been interesting for him to. He's a trapper. This is a creature. If he found those clues out on his own, if he did something like that. Another thing I noticed, so this character doesn't have a name. Usually that indicates that we're supposed to put ourselves onto the character, but that doesn't seem to be true here. So I wonder why that choice was made for the main protagonist not to have a name.
I think it works.
I think it works as well. I'm just curious as to why. Usually it has some kind of like greater symbolism behind it.
Yeah.
Where I'm not really picking that up here. I don't think like we're really supposed to, know what it's like to be a trapper who lives in the middle of the woods. So I wonder why that choice was made. I'd love to know.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this story. I loved the design of the creature mainly. And I especially enjoyed that it wasn't this big, like, action-filled scene to get rid of it. It was literally, it feeds off a reaction. It feeds off human nature.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. It's that pacing's the main issue for me. It's
that's
like,
fair.
He came to that realization, like, I feel like we harped on that a little too much,
sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if this had been like information that he picked up over time, I feel like that would have been a little bit stronger. I really love it. I love the whole thing. Don't get me wrong. I feel like it would have benefited from being a longer story overall. And that's usually the opposite, right? But it's such a great idea here. I feel like there's so much to it that
Absolutely.
it could have been stretched out quite a bit and been fleshed out a little more, if that makes sense.
I totally get that as well. I think I completely agree with that. I think this thing taking place maybe over a month, something he notices first. Of course he does, because this is his land. But it only really gets to him over time. He only realizes the problem over time. And then his dog goes missing. That could be the nail in the coffin.
Exactly. Like, I don't know. It's a little odd to me that like the reminder of his dog is what sets him off. I feel like it should have been like, that should have been the build up. You know what I mean? Like first it's his neighbor. Yeah. And then the dog.
Like we're introduced to the neighbor, we don't know the dog at all. We hear it in the third person a lot, and of course that's going to tug at your heartstrings. Like we've got Nova obviously, but
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really feel like it had that punch. I didn't get the same stakes that the character had, so to say.
Yeah. No, but I really loved it overall. I think the atmosphere of it was incredible, and it was just so beautifully written. And it was really fun. It was just, the whole thing was really fun to follow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was easily probably an 8 or a 9 for me
Yeah,
out of 10.
absolutely.
Really enjoyed
easily.
that.
That was like one of the first times ever that we didn't pause to talk about
No, we didn't. We just like literally went right through.
I think just once at the start to say how much we loved it.
There was lots of times where I could have paused and be like, I like this specific part. I like that specific part.
No, I didn't stop because I didn't feel like we had anything to say besides like, oh, this is amazing.
Although the pacing is very fast, I feel like it flows really well. Yeah, it's like one thing into the other. It's not broken up in a sort of strange way.
Yeah. No, there's no fat in it, and that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this idea deserves to be more.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
No, I completely understand that. I think I couldn't agree more with you, especially as a story that I thought was going to end up being your classic Wendigo story. I think I would have loved to see a more fleshed out version of this. I would have loved to see a slower burn, you know, like and then at the end the confrontation is more meaningful, you know.
Yeah. No, but outstanding. I really enjoyed it. I don't let if you're listening, no shallot 7984 or whatever. If you're listening, don't let any of my criticisms get you down. This was still incredible. I'd love to read more of your shit.
I would really like to read more of these stories. The other one they did was like We Don't Look at the Moon or something. That one seems like a really interesting concept to me.
Sounds very
I'm
exciting.
fascinated by that. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to revisit this author.
Absolutely.
This was so good.
There's so many good ones. I feel like we've been on a roll lately with these stories, honestly.
No, doing like the lesser known ones has been the best decision ever. Like these are so good.
It's fantastic. I don't think I've come across a single story that's been boring or like a slog to read. You know, these have all been interesting stories.
No matter what the quality of them is, they're always like fun and interesting.
Absolutely. And that's definitely a product of, you know, this is people's actual creativity.
Hell yeah,
it's not been marketed towards like the masses. It's themselves.
Yeah. No,
and
I
it's beautiful. That's why I'll always love no sleep stories. Anything that's been made like this is just pure creativity. Yeah. Cannot help but admire that.
Hell yeah.
Good
Keep
job.
writing. No shallow and what's his other name?
Lord Void.
Mr. Nightmare.
Mr. Nightmare.
Lord Voiden. All right, everybody, go check out Lord Voiden's Reddit in the description. This story was incredible. Go give him some support. Tell him Caledonian Creepshow sent you.
Give him those upvotes. Give him the money.
Give him Reddit gold.
Yes,
Do they still have gold?
Do they? I've actually never really been a Redditor.
Give him gold, and he'll say thank you for the gold, kind stranger.
Give him a birthday cake emoji.
Tell him Happy Cake Day. Visit his page every 365 days to remind him Happy Cake Day from the Caledonian Creepshow.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's going to be the episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Nova, what did you think of that episode?
Oh, he could not care less. So tolerant. Look at him.
Just nothing.
No reaction whatsoever.
Bye.